That's what I figure. Yep. What's that? Oh, yes, there is a vulnerability in June. You're right. That's right. Yeah, although it turns out, well, a lot of people got excited, but in a way they were doing what they kind of had to do. A lot of people did. But they're running a local web server so they could connect quickly without having to have approval screens pop up. But anyway, a lot of people got upset about it. Anyway, let's take a look and see what else there is fun in the news.
You didn't watch that video I told you about?
No. And see what else there is. This one is entertaining, and so was that one. And yeah. That was pretty good.
I found a video about how to meet people on YouTube. What can you do?
Anyway, so here's a few things that might be fun to look at. Let's see if I can get the stupid Zoom out of the way. All right. That's one irritating thing about Zoom. It keeps on hogging up the top inch of my screen, but such is life. So this bank, this happens. Troy Hunt does a lot of internet security. He's always finding things like this. And this bank has an automatic script that tells everybody not to use password managers. There are also, I've seen banks that tell you not to use HTTPS and stuff like that. They have, because they, remember, a lot of things that came out years ago, there are banks that force you to use old versions of Adobe PDF Reader to fill out forms that are vulnerable. And so a lot of banks just have very bad ideas about security. And, let's see. Good, people have joined, and I need to mute them. All right. Somebody's got a sound on that they don't know about, which is very common. Anyway, so it's a good, clean fun, and he can't reach anybody at the bank, of course, because, of course, they're the kind of people that program these scripts also have no security contact. So we'll see what comes of that. So Apple had a patch which unpatched the previous vulnerability, which made it vulnerable again. And so I meant an old iOS jailbreak now works again, which is pretty rare and pretty awesome. Usually there are no public iOS jailbreaks for modern versions of Apple because they're worth $1 million. But this week there's one, because one of the old ones started working again. So that's good, clean fun. So if you want to jailbreak your iOS device, it would be easy this week. This happens every few years. There's a brief period of time when it's very easy to jailbreak an iPhone. So this was pretty good. It was a Chinese company. I think they had an AI startup that could write code, and what it does is it just passes it on to humans that write the code. They claimed that their AI could write an app, which is, I think I've seen this in lots of TV shows where they have like a chess-playing robot, but inside there's just a guy, you know. So they got busted for that. But that's good social engineering. And this one I heard about, apparently it's been hit the news a few months ago. You know, if you use ordinary mapping software, it'll give you latitude and longitude down to like 8 places, but a lot of people have trouble with that. So this has mapped the entire Earth to 3 words. They took all, the vocabulary of a normal human is 20 or 40,000 words. They took 40,000 words and cubed it, and that's enough to get the entire Earth mapped to like a 10-foot by 10-foot square. And so when people are like lost in the woods and call 911, they tell them install this app and give you the 3 words, and it tells you where you are. So this has saved people's lives and stuff. So Cloud Fame Sport is this place in York. And so on, every place on Earth has a 3-word identifier. So that's useful. And this one's pretty good. Katie Mazouris is very famous. She's the one that started the Microsoft Bug Bounty program. And the Digital Forensic Crime Lab, the Department of Defense, has now blocked her on Twitter, which is pretty entertaining. You wonder what's going on, but I think it's fairly common that companies don't understand social networks and they just give some low-level employee with no clue control of the social network. And I guess that's probably what happened here, but and again, nobody can figure out how to reach anybody. Even people that used to work there are trying to figure out who did this and what your story is. But you know, there's always a lot of epic stupidity in this business and on the internet. That's part of what's fun about it. Let's see what else. This one was interesting. And this was more interesting than I thought it would be. And Yeah. Not sure I'll find enough good ones right now. But so yeah, as you know, people are marching in Hong Kong for I think the 10th or 11th straight week against the Chinese government. Of course, they have a point. Hong Kong was supposed to be independent for 50 years. And it's only been about 22 years and suddenly China's moving in and they're complaining, but you know, mobs protesting mainland China don't have a good history. But apparently the international pressure is such that China is not willing to directly move in the army and just slaughter them all yet. But they're trying to ramp up for that by making fake accounts of how violent they are. And so people say they go to the march, it's peaceful, and China has paid people to put up false news claiming it was violent when it wasn't, to try to make the Chinese people support military action. And that is, of course, the modern world. That's what happened in the last presidential election. It's the new propaganda technique. And so we'll see. But a lot of people believe what they read on social networks more than they believe reputable news sources. And because they're all going broke, the reputable news sources are far less reputable than they used to be. Bloomberg, for example, just makes up complete lies and publishes them, refuses to retract them. About 6 months ago, Bloomberg had an explosive story that all the iPhones and Android have extra chips that China has attached to the board, and they're surveilling them all, and Apple knows about it and won't do anything about it. And every major company, Apple and Cisco and everybody, came out and said, this is absolutely not true. Nobody's adding extra hardware. They made it up. Everybody debunked it. And Bloomberg refused to retract it. They said it never had any results from the supposed internal investigation, and they continue to be a highly respected top news source, but they just make up lies and refuse to admit it, and this is very common. And there were two major stories in the last couple of weeks that came from Forbes that were completely fabricated and Forbes retracted them, but what came out, which I heard, I don't have independent verification, is Forbes, in fact, is just blogging. You're a Forbes contributor, they just give you a name and password, you just put up anything you want, there's no editor or anything, no review, no check of anything, it's just random bloggers, it's not a real news source at all. And my impression is that's what pretty much all of them are now. I see major typographical errors in them. I think the New York Times is better than that, but very few of them are actually better than that. I think there's so little money that they're just random people blogging, but nobody actually even checking the spelling or facts or anything anymore, because the old-fashioned established print advertising is pretty much over. Anyway, somebody had a comment? Yeah. Bloomberg what?
The Bloomberg story?
Yeah.
It was the server by Supermicro.
A server, Supermicro, yes, Supermicro servers, yes. But also Apple devices. They claim that Apple devices had these extra chips. That's why Apple responded, all the companies responded, the government responded, and they refused to retract it or correct it or even investigate it in an effective way. But nobody seemed to care.
Apple shipping in Taiwan. It's not in China.
What's that?
Apple shipping in Taiwan.
Well, that's true. Well, is in Taiwan. Okay, yeah. I know Apple. Yeah, it was a very strange story and apparently just completely false. Anyway.
They can't sue them?
What's that?
They can't sue them?
Well, that's an interesting issue. I bet Apple or Cisco, I know we're specifically named, they probably could sue Bloomberg if they wanted to. But I mean, I've learned this myself. If the press lies about you, suing them just makes everything worse. This is not the solution for anything, not in America. This is part of what Trump yells about. Suing them just makes everyone believe them more. Yeah.
And also laws that protect, free speech. No, not free speech, but laws that protect news agencies if they make a mistake or if it's not a malicious action, like you really can't sue them. Like, it's not possible.
Well, you can sue them if you can prove that it hurt you and you can prove that it's false. But those are really hard to do because free speech is so strong in America. You really get almost nowhere. And the main thing about it is they will all vigorously defend themselves even when they're wrong, because any attempt to censor media gets people very angry, although this is changing very fast. Now the right and the left have united in the desire to censor politics on the internet. That is really coming. Anyway, we'll be talking about that a little later. Anyway, we're about to the right time here. See if there's anything else. Oh, this one was kind of fun. This was a dusting attack. Cryptocurrencies have this effect. Now, I don't really understand exactly why this happens. I know more or less what would happen for Ethereum, but you can give people cryptocurrency. You do not need their consent. You can find their address, it's on the public chain, and you can send them money. And if you do that, then if you wait for them to spend the money, that will de-anonymize them. Because if you send them a tiny amount of money, like a fraction of a penny, then their wallet, so your cryptocurrency wallet generates a whole bunch of random addresses. So you might have 100 addresses that are all you. But if I put a tiny amount of money in each of them and then you spend the money, your wallet will aggregate them and spend them all together, and now I know they're connected. So this was a dusting attack. Somebody did this recently to Litecoin, one of the major cryptocurrencies. They performed a dusting attack where you put a little bit of dust in everybody's wallet. And then if you watch the blockchain after that, you can tell when they spend that money and find out who people are. It's one Nona technique. So it's interesting to see, and no one knows who did it or why. You could do it for law enforcement purposes. You could do it for spamming. You could do it for a lot of purposes. But this is why, you know, people try to commit crimes with Bitcoin, and it is a very unwise thing to do because there's a permanent public ledger of everything that happens. This is why we have Zcash. Zcash is the anonymous cash that really scrambles the addresses in a way that makes it really hard to find out who's spending money. But the other cryptocurrencies, it's not that hard at all to find out who's doing what. Anyway, so we're up to the official time here. So this is a new class, and it deserves some explanation. There's a handout there with the usual rules and stuff, which I'll mention, which are not that exciting. But the point of this class is to consider how to manage people's cybersecurity posture. And the government has to do this, and CEOs of companies have to do it, and even the heads of families and small businesses have to do it. So you have to make decisions that affect the people underneath you. And therefore, you have conflicts. And the most obvious one you hear the most about is privacy versus security. In order to find out if people are doing a bad thing, you have to monitor their internet traffic and their email. But of course, that's invading their privacy. So you have a natural conflict there, and there are many of these conflicts. So in order to, this class is modeled after a new class at Tufts that Meng Chao made, which was Cybersecurity for Future Presidents. And on the East Coast, they're much closer to the military and real government leaders. Here, I had less of a focus on that, but I wanted to give it some rigor, so I decided I'd give it the CISM certification. And we're going to cover, perhaps not all, but at least some of CISM certification, which is the standard certification you get to become a security manager. And this is the point, you learn how to do it. This is not a technical class. There won't be any hands-on projects where you're installing software and seeing it do anything. Instead, you'll be writing papers and giving presentations. Everybody has to write 2 papers, and they have to be well written and not plagiarized. And they have to give 2 in-class presentations, which will be strictly limited to 5 minutes long. And those are the skills you're going to need. And we'll cover this. So this will be the technical information, or the rigorous information, such as with tests and such based on this, to lead you to CISM certification, which is a valuable thing to get. And I have a lot of other things on the political side, which I will talk about sort of as extra credit and sort of for color, which is the current situation. This is one of many books. I found 4 books so far that I'm going through for these lectures. The Perfect Weapon discusses the modern use of cyber attacks for political reasons. It's the new covert warfare. I'll talk about that tonight. And then here's other books I'm going through: The Shadow War, Ill Winds, and the Age of Surveillance Capitalism, and there are many others. We are living through a very interesting time, a new Cold War based on cyber attacks that is part of the rearrangement of the global powers as the United States declines and China becomes the new world superpower. And it's all mostly happening with cyber attacks because nobody much wants to really have a kinetic war with atomic bombs in World War III, but they do need to sort of jockey for position and punch each other in minor ways, and they do it mostly with cyber attacks.
What was that?
You find them all here. These, yeah.
It's all on the page.
It's all on the page, yeah. And so everything is at samsclass.info, and it's here. And if you go there, you click on 160, and everything will be here. Oh, next week there's a job fair. If you're looking for a job, you should go there. If you're not necessarily looking for a job now, but you want to know what's out there and what skills are required, you should go there to see what people say. We'll have, what, a dozen employers there or more? Yeah, and they'll be there. So go there. That's why class will be an hour late next week. I will not start till 7:10 to give people time to go to the job fair before this. You don't have to go, but I'm not going to make this conflict with the job fair. Yeah?
Well, I was just going to ask, it sounds like there's more employers this time around.
I don't know, Steve?
Yeah, so it's a lot of the regular folks. There's more, but they're not necessarily more cybersecurity employers. There's a couple of schools, coding schools who are looking for teachers, and they're not there with like 3 people, our former students, 2 or 3 people. NCC Group is the only cybersecurity company that's actually going to be there. UCSF will be there. They don't typically hire for cybersecurity, but you know, they had a guy at the last shop there who met them and applied for a field IT internship, and they ended up hiring him as a cybersecurity analyst. Yeah. And San Francisco Housing Authority, they had a guy hired out of there.
Oh, yeah.
Analyst from NASA. But they're not going to be there this time. But it's just, you know, the example is that you can go and just go apply for a field IT job, and they find out you've been on the SAM students, you've got all these facets, and they know how to do something different.
Well, good. All right, so let me bring up this chapter to talk about. I'm allowed to mention the grading and such. So here, so you have, all right, here we go. There are going to be quizzes. There's an online system, just like always. It's not the City College Canvas system, because I never use City College anything, because the restrictions make it impossible to do what I need to do. I'm using a different server. So go to this server, and you'll find quizzes up there you can take, and that affects your grade. All the classes are recorded, placed on YouTube, and they're live streamed. So you can attend from anywhere by Zoom and such. And I will be traveling myself more than usual this semester probably, so I may be connecting in remotely as well as the students, but most of the time I'm here. But a lot of students don't choose to physically attend. They just watch the Zoom or they watch the video, and that's fine. It does not affect your grade whether you attend or not. Your grade is determined by quizzes, and in this class, term papers and presentations. So the quizzes are every week or so. As you see, we go down here. Nothing is late until after the add period, so not until after the 16th will anything lose points for being late. And then there are, so you have to have a topic chosen by 9/16 for your first paper. So you do not have to write the paper by them, but you have to turn in your topic. So you've chosen what you're going to write about, and then 2 weeks later, you should start, the paper will be due. And it looks, yeah, paper way down here, the paper's due. I may adjust that timing, but we'll see. Anyway, but then you'll have a presentation here. And I expect the presentations here, you get extra credit by doing them early, and you lose points if you do them late. So we will work it out, and if the class is too big for the presentations to go, we'll have to adapt. This is the first time I've taught the class, and this is a new format for me. I have not assigned term papers in the past because I've been worried about the plagiarism. There's an incredible number of people who now think it's perfectly fine to just copy and paste Wikipedia, put their name on it, and use that for papers. For example, Joe Biden did that. That's one of the many scandals about him. So I will punish people who do that. I'm not going to throw them out of the class or anything. I'll make them do the paper over and maybe take some points off, but don't be doing that. I will make an attempt to discover if people have plagiarized work. If you want a quote from somebody, that's fine, but you have to say, this is a quote, I took it from here. You can't just pass off somebody else's writing as yours, but I am aware that a large number of people are in the habit of doing that, so I won't be surprised if people try to do it. We will make an attempt to capture them and punish them, because you have to not do that. And the point is, you need to be able to write something clear and well spelled and grammatical in your own voice, and you need to be able to give oral presentations before small groups effectively. Those are skills you need to be at all effective on the job anymore, and especially in a management role, but really in any role. So that's something that weaken my classes is the term paper thing, forcing students to write. That is part of the educational experience that I'm trying to put in this class, which I have not had in my other classes. Anyway.
You allow group presentations, so does all have to be independent?
Individual.
Yeah. And so what will some of, like, what is the range of things we can address?
Anything related to cybersecurity or even political things, and that's why I want to see the topics.
Yeah.
But I really think I don't really care that much about the topic. It's a pretty broad area. Something remotely related to cybersecurity or the consequences of cybersecurity decisions would be nice, but make me an offer. And that's why I have these other topics we're going to talk about to try to be inspiring and make people think about things. We're living in a very turbulent age. There's a lot of issues that are happening all around us: privacy, invasion. All kinds of attacks, all kinds of political jockeying. Anyway, so I'm quite open to a different topic, because of course the point of these papers is not only to make you research a topic and learn more about it, but also for you to practice communicating. But if it's totally outside cybersecurity, I might ask you to do a different topic. That's why I want you to turn in the topics and let me see them before you prepare your papers and presentations so I can make sure they're okay. And also to make sure people are making progress. Yeah.
So what if people find something interesting, but I'm not trying to plagiarize, but I found someone's talked about something or a newspaper article, you're not going to count that as plagiarism, right?
No, you can totally refer to sources. Everything has sources. You just have to give them credit. You say, I didn't write this. This is a quote from my source.
Or this is a video I found.
Sure.
And this is someone talked about something.
Yes, but then you have to add something to it that you created. It's perfectly fine to talk about something. That's all I ever do. Everything I get comes from textbook or somewhere, but you don't just repeat what's in the book. You put it in your own words.
I would put on like your own spin on it and your pros and cons of what good and bad about it.
Exactly. That's what you do. You comment on it. Good. Yeah.
And just now at home, sir, again, are you asking for proper MLA format?
Oh no, I'm not that picky. Not MLA, just proper English. I don't even know the MLA format or anything. I'm never going to get that far into the humanities. No, just reasonable English. Very good question. I know there are all those formal rules, but I don't know. Yeah. No, misspellings, I will dock you for, but not failure to obey the MLA format. I know what you're saying. There is an official format for and I don't know it, and I'm not going to expect anyone to do that. Yeah.
There's an IEEE format.
Yeah. Oh, there's a bunch of them. Yeah, there's a bunch of official. You don't need to match any of them. You just need to have something reasonable. I'm not looking for humanities thesis type stuff. I'm looking for business communication stuff, something that is readable, understandable, and clear, spelled correctly. That's all I'm looking for. The kind of presentation that would be acceptable on the job if you have to write a report about something, because that's what we're doing here. Good. I'm glad you bring it up. Yeah.
Are we going to be turning this into an email or are we trying to
Email. It has to come in by email because we have to pass it through an automatic engine to see if it's stolen. So it has to come in by email with plain text. So we can copy and paste it into a plagiarism detection site, which you can do. Anyway, so anyways, there's two cycles of those, and I may be adjusting this as the class goes forward because this is the first time I taught this class, and I may find needs to adjust, to change what we do, but that's my current plan. And all right, any other questions? Oh, did anybody come to add? Okay, I forgot to look up the ad. There's totally room. We can add people. I've got to look up the ad codes. I'll probably do it later during the break. Yeah.
So if there's authorization issues right now.
With banners down again?
Yeah.
Yeah, we've down a couple. I'm not surprised. You probably can't add right now anyway. Yeah, I'm not surprised. Banner is always messed up. Yeah. Anyway, I will get ad codes, and you can certainly add. You have a couple of weeks to do it anyway. All right. So let's talk about the first chapter in the book, and then I'll talk about some of the cyber war stuff. So this is a CISM. If you want to get the certification, which I recommend, we already have CISSP training here, and CISM is easier than CISSP, but it is somewhat different. And so you become a CISM certified professional. This is an ISACA certification, which is a different organization than IFC squared that puts out the CISSP. And so I'm just going to talk about how this works. The point of this is it's well respected. People expect you to have it to get a manager job, and it means you know the basics of how to be a security manager. Let me move this over here because somehow this seems to be the better place for me to stand to stay out of the way, I think. Anyway, all right, so these are the kind of jobs you get: executives, chief financial officers, management executives, auditors, which are compliance, privacy officers, and so on. Many people might have the certification so they understand how to perform the duties of management. And so you need experience, 5 years of experience, 3 of those in CISM job practice areas. This is less experience required than for a CISSP, where you must have 5 years of experience on the particular security topics. There's an ethics requirement, which is very much like the CISSP ethics requirement, really quite simple. You just have to be reasonably legal and professional in your activities. There's an exam, and you have to continue to have education. This is true for both CISSP and CISM. You must have constant education to be aware of new things. If you don't, your certification will become invalid after 3 years. So you pass the test, and then you apply for the certification. So you register for the exam, pass the exam, then you have to document work experience, then you have to pay a maintenance fee and continue it. And if you fail to pay the fees and earn the continued professional education, then you lose it. This is exactly the way the CISSP works. So the 3 years of work experience have to be in things like risk management or security governance or incident management, security-oriented jobs. And you can substitute quite a bit of the experience with other things. CISA and CISSP, which are both valuable certifications, replace some of it. Other certifications count, or completion of a management program at an accredited college counts. So there's a lot of things that will substitute for experience. And one thing which is kind of amazing is teachers can waive all the experience, which I must say is the opposite for the CISSP. It took me 6 years to get my CISSP after I passed the exam because teaching does not count. And I had to apply and get up to human consideration, and I convinced them that developing new curriculum counted. But anyway, these guys think being a teacher counts. It's just a different philosophy. Anyway, and here's the ethics. Encourage people to comply with standards, do good work, obey the law, and of course, maintain privacy and confidentiality of information. If you, in my CISSP class, we do real security audits and students have to sign a non-disclosure agreement. I'm not planning to do that here, but it is something to be aware of. If you become a security professional of any type, it's like being a doctor or a lawyer. You now will know secrets. You will go inside a company, you will find weaknesses, you will find poor practices, and you are required to shut up about them. Part of the deal is you know their internal dirt and you promise not to reveal it. You're helping them avoid hitting the headlines. So the whole reason they hire you is to find out what's wrong and fix it before it becomes a scandal. So you obviously can't be blabbing about it. So, all right. So you have to maintain competency. This is general ethics for any kind of contractor. Know what you can do and know what you cannot do. When they come to you and say, I want you to do a pen test, and you don't know how to do a pen test, you don't lie. You say, well, I'm not the one to do that. Let me refer you to my partner over here who can do that. But don't pretend to do things you're not competent to do. And therefore make sure that you have a reasonable expectation that you're capable of doing what you promised to do, and make sure to tell people what they need to know. One of my students called me a few years ago and said he was an IT independent contractor, and so the hospital called him and said, our server is infected, workstation's infected, come in and clean it off. So he cleaned it off. Then he called me and said, gee, I'm not very happy about this. I don't think this job is done. And I say, you're right, the job is not done. You now have to find out what else got infected, what data was stolen. Is this a breach? Is it really over? And he said, yeah, but they don't want to pay me to do any more work. And I said, well, then write a letter and say, I don't feel good about this. And I have a document saying, I informed you that in my opinion, this job is not done right. And you're the boss, it's your equipment. I can't force you to let me finish fixing it, but you can certainly make a record so that when disaster happens, you'll have something to say, look, I didn't tell them it was fine when it wasn't. It's a good idea. So make sure you tell people what they need to know, even if that is not in your self-interest and not what they want to hear. It's your job to make sure people know the truth, like you're buying something and that product is not really going to work, that sort of thing. And all these ones have a requirement to help beginners. People come in, support their education of stakeholders and students and such. It is very often the case in this business that your customers do not understand what they need. I'd say that's the standard situation here. People have a security problem, and when they hire you, they don't want to hear, oh no, we don't want to have to retrain the way we write software. We don't want to change the way we log in. We don't want to add these extra devices to the network, but that's what they have to do. So your job is actually educating them to understand what they need, as well as helping to set it up. All right, and so you have to sign up for this thing. This is only $50 for the application fee. Whoa, $575? No, I see. I think, yeah, now I'm confused. I know the CISSP is $600, and it sounds like this thing is too. I don't remember why there's two different fees here. But anyway, it's not cheap. It'd be sure nice if you can get your boss or somebody to pay for it. But and the exams only happen a few times per year. I know for the CISSP, I think the same thing's true here. It's not like, say, Security Plus or A Plus, where you can take it anytime you want. These are not that popular, so they only appear occasionally. You have to plan in advance to go in and take the test. So yeah, make an application. After you pass the test, you then verify your work experience and get a transcript if you have to get experience waivers, and then you can get the certification. It's the same for the CISSP. I've got students doing the same thing. You pass the test, and then you have to send your resume to existing CISSP who has to verify that it's all, that you really have the experience before you really get it. And they're also vouching for your ethics, that you're not a known criminal or anything. So your continuing education in both cases is really quite broad. Going to conferences counts, taking classes counts. It really is pretty much anything that teaches you security that you're not getting paid for. Whatever you do on the job does not count. It has to be something outside that, like teaching a class at a conference or watching videos counts, reading books counts, going to any kind of conference counts, and so on. But you have to document it. Every year you have to fill out a form saying, what did you do? I went to this so many hours, this so many hours, and add it up. I've been claiming DEF CON for years. There was a big belief in the security community about 5 or 6 years ago that DEF CON wouldn't count. So I started counting DEF CON as my experience for my CISSP for years, and it's fine. Of course, then I learned how it works. Nobody's looking at it. Nobody audits it unless someone complains. So it's sort of like income tax. You could be doing something sleazy, but nobody really knows it's sleazy until you get audited. So, but I think now DEF CON is pretty well established and no longer considered edgy and criminal. I don't think anybody would claim that DEF CON is horrible and shouldn't count the way they would have 10 years ago. Anyway, all these things count, even vendor sales pitches and such, as long as they're not part of your job. Teaching, helping, publishing articles, helping write exam questions for the next exam, you know, any kind of contribution to help others, mentoring people that are coming in, you know, just like you might think, anything that advances and protects the profession. And these things are imitating the rules for lawyers and doctors that had this before. Lawyers and doctors have to do a certain amount of pro bono work. We're just imitating the same system. This is what it takes to make a healthy community of professionals, is rules that force the established ones to help the beginners. So you have a flow of people in. And there's maintenance fees. All right, you can have your certification revoked if you don't have the CPEs or you fail to comply with the code of ethics. I know I've had this happen to me. There was a disgruntled person who decided to lie about me and have my Associate of ISC Squared certification revoked by sending a false complaint about me. And for CISSPs, anyone can complain, even if they're not your customer, not your colleague, and you have nothing to do with them. They can file an ethics complaint against you and you have to defend yourself. I defended myself and won, but you do have to respond within 30 days or you lose. And I don't know exactly the process here, but it sounds like it's about the same. People can't complain about you and then there'll be a review. In practice, this doesn't seem to do much good. And again, it's modeled after lawyers and doctors. And there are famous cases of doctors that did unethical things and actually lost their right to practice medicine, and lawyers. In the security community, this seems to only be used to harass people that aren't crooks. It doesn't seem to actually get rid of the crooks. But hopefully someday, as we mature as a profession, we'll reach the point where people actually lose their certification when they do bad things. Unfortunately, the people I know that have done really terrible things, like the CTO at this college that made a fake virus outbreak to create a scandal at the college, never had this certification. They didn't know enough to put it on the job requirement. So it's not established enough. People don't understand. So there will come a time when everybody has to have a certification to have a certain role, and then it will mean something when they revoke it. But it's not quite that organized yet. Anyway, I got some cahoots about that. So let me bring them up. You need a computer or a cell phone or something. And let me bring them up here. And that would be this one.
Actually, in this scenario, it's good to have a digital trace, not just giving you, here, I sent you some paperwork for you to read and feel by claim. I never read your statement.
What are you talking about?
About
the ethics violation?
Yeah.
The ethics violation does not go to me.
No, I'm saying about your statement where, like, write a letter saying that, that you told the client that, I told you that I
that's all right. If that's
X, Y, Z.
Well, that's what's called a cover your ass letter. It doesn't matter if they don't read it. You just have to prove they got it. If they ignore it, your point is to have an answer if someone claims, wait, you were the security consultant, you didn't fix this problem. You say, well, I actually told them, and they decided not to fix it. But you don't want people to feel like you were the one they trusted to fix it and you didn't do it. That's the point. Otherwise, it's your reputation. Everything is reputation here. That's why, try to stay out of the spats and the Twitter fights and everything. You don't, because this business is small and it's very likely that whoever you're having a fight with will be your boss before long. So It's best to keep a sort of dignified professional relationship. Anyway, people are getting in. So go to kahoot.it and put in that number, and you can compete for glorious points. You get 3 points if you're one of the top 3 scorers. I have 2 of these tonight. I'll wait a bit and see how many we can get. There ought to be more than 9, I would think. Yeah, here they come. All right, good. Carl the Fog. All right. Good.
What does this do?
It's an online quiz, like a game show. And if you get the most, if you're one of the top 3 scorers, you get some extra credit. That's all. The only point is to keep people from falling asleep in lecture so much. So, yeah. And while that's happening, I might as well start a place to put your winners. Okay. And it's 8:19. All right. Good. I have a place to record winners. All right, so we got 16. I'll give it another few seconds to see if there are more people coming. Yeah, okay, good. Kahoot.it. It's Italian, I guess. They just merged with somebody. I think these guys are also a startup. And I bet this product is not going to be free much longer, but it's free at the moment. There come a few people. Then there's Caitlin, who will come in with 1,024. Yeah, she had a bot that would make 1,000 entries and answer every question. So this is not a terribly secure system. There are ways to hack it. Anyway. All right. Let me give it another few seconds, and then we'll carry on with what we got here. Oh, here comes some more. All right, well, let's go with 20. Are you coming? Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Well, this is good. We'll do this every lecture so people will get used to it.
This is instead of the little things you pass out.
Right, right. I used to have those things, but this works for online students. They can be tuning in remotely and still do it. And so it also has the happy music. It's better. Yes, but I used to use these radio controlled devices to do the same thing. Yeah. Did you get in? Okay. Well, let's see how it goes. So you'll see the questions up here and you have to answer on your device. So, yes. Okay. What organization administers this certification? Okay, it's ISACA. All right. So which officer focuses on privacy? All right, Chief Privacy Officer, there is such a thing these days. All right. So how many years of work do you need to get a CISM? In the job practice areas. There's only three in the job practice areas, 5 years of total experience, but only 3 of them have to be in those specific areas. It's about half of what you need for a CISSP. The whole thing is CISA is also about half of a CISSP. All right. And how many hours of continuing education every 3 years? All right, 120. All right, so there are the winners. Now I know two of them. Two of them are names I know from the past.
What's the point, right?
No, that's fine. I know who this is. I know who MDOT is. The other one will have to tell me who they are if they want their points. Me. All right. And all right, so I'd like to start talking about Cyberwar. And we've got another 20 minutes. I think I'll just go right into it. And we might take a break later. We'll see how this goes. But I've got, this is the, from the other books, this is the stuff that is not directly related to CISM, but which I think may be of interest and importance. And these are the other topics that affect us these days. So this all started because of the advanced persistent threats. Until about 12 years ago, really maybe only about 8 years ago, people had a belief that their company would not get hacked. They thought if you put on antivirus and firewalls and intrusion detection systems, that the odds are pretty good that nobody's going to hack you and your system will just be clean and everything will be fine. And then came Google's attack by China. Google had expanded into China after a very vigorous internal ethics debate. They were very concerned about moving into China where they would have to restrict what they did to obey Chinese law. And they, with some trepidation, expanded into China, and China did what they did to all American companies. They forced them to hire local people, and they put spies in their network, and they hacked back into Google. And they hacked back into Google in California to steal the pen register data, which was there showing who had sent Gmail to other people, because they wanted to track down Chinese dissidents outside the country. And they got caught because Google monitored their network and they saw the outgoing traffic and they saw that their data was being stolen and sent to China. And then Google then broke the same law by hacking into the Chinese server and stealing the data back. And I talked to the Secret Service agent. They came and gave a talk here about this, and they said, we told Google not to do that. You're breaking the law too, but we did not press charges. But Google stole back the data, and they found that 30 other American companies had also been hacked by China as well. And this was an open secret in the security community. Everybody in the community knew that everybody was getting hacked by China, but nobody would admit it publicly. And Google was so personally offended by this that the CEO chose to publicly reveal around Christmas that China had hacked them, and that kicked over a can of worms and changed the world, because now everybody knew that China was hacking everybody, and they were blasting right through all your security stuff. That was supposed to be, you pay $1 million for these advanced devices, and they were blasting through it like it wasn't there. And therefore, all these supposedly efficient prevention measures were not working. And China was living inside the networks, putting permanent presences and gradually stealing all the data they wanted for years at a time. And that was the advanced persistent threat, a Navy term. So people became aware of this, and in the last 8 years, the entire philosophy of protecting corporate networks has changed into a defense in-depth philosophy where you accept that the smarter attackers, primarily foreign military, will punch through everything and get in your network, and you have to accept that. And instead of imagining that you have something that's keeping them out, you have to have detection to notice when they're in and then respond to it. Just like you respond to fires in the buildings, and just expect a certain level of it all along and have a layered defense system. So hopefully you detect them before they get to the really important stuff, and your response system can eject them efficiently enough that you have some level of protection of your really advanced stuff. So this was the China attack. They attacked everybody. Mandiant was the company that invented the modern system of protecting yourself and the modern system of detecting it all. And they found many attacks. China primarily attacked America, and this was all public information. China announced publicly years ago that they were going to improve the economy of China, and they were going to build a new China by stealing intellectual property from the West, which is not seen as immoral in the Chinese system, because they do not believe in personal ownership of important patents and that you should patent it and get money for it. They believe it should be public knowledge and available for the public to use. So they steal it and make Chinese knockoffs of everything. And this violates American law, but it certainly does not violate Chinese law or Chinese morals. And it's part of the big global issue here, as our two systems bicker over fundamental differences in values. So Lockheed Martin developed the kill chain. This is what happens with advanced persistent threats. Now, before this, there was a much lower level kind of attacker, like thrill seeker would hack your network and put up an insulting picture to just brag that they hacked you or something, or steal some credit card numbers and then leave. That's a smash and grab attack, and that's a low-level attack, and that's what you can stop with things like firewall and intrusion detection systems. But the advanced resistant threat actors are military campaigns done by professionals. So they choose a target, they choose a goal, they have a mission. They're trying to steal a certain thing or maintain a certain presence. So now they organize accomplices, gather tools, research the target. This is a big issue. You don't start attacking, instead you do research. You find their weak spots. They'll do things like find a security convention like DEF CON that a bunch of people go to, and they will then target them at the convention. Or they will send emails offering them to talk at the next convention, or saying, here's some PDF you have to open with information about the hotels at the convention or something. They've done this quite a bit. They will find a way to get to you by researching you. Then once they get in, they will test to see how smart you are. They will send something to see if you detect it, to probe your defenses, because they have to decide what level of attack to use. An advanced resistant threat actor, if they are truly advanced, they do not waste their advanced tools on the wrong targets, because they don't want to burn their tools. The most valuable tools are 0 days, and they're very expensive to make, and they're only good until somebody catches them. So you don't send a 0 day to a smart target, because they will detect it and tell the antivirus companies, and then it's not a 0 day anymore. So you will probe to decide what to do. Then you deploy some kind of malware or on the system. You get an initial intrusion somewhere, typically by phishing. You get somebody to click on an email link or run an attachment. Then you have some ability to run some code in the network, typically on a low privilege laptop of probably not a top worker. Now you try to communicate from inside the network back home to the command and control center, which is quite a chore in a proper network. The individual laptops can't get back easily. Then you do lateral motion. You elevate your privileges, move from the laptop to a server, move from the server to another server, try to get to email servers and domain controllers and things that really have the goodies. And then you try to plant seeds so they really can't get rid of you. And this is what Google found China had done. They had not only established persistent communication where the data was being stolen, encrypted, stuck in small packets, and sent out slowly back to China so it was mixed in with normal traffic. They put sleeper malware on the system, some that would wait for 3 months and then wake up, and some that would wait for 3 years and then wake up. And the point of this is, even when they catch you and they clean up their systems, then they restore from what they think are clean backups, and 3 years later it wakes up because you still have the malware on them. If you really are serious, you do this because you're not just trying to steal credit card numbers today, you're trying to establish a permanent spy on their network, and you're willing to accept a year of downtime while you wait for the 3 years to wake up. Yeah.
So, I mean, I looked at China and they make all these networking equipment. I mean,
Oh,
they have
yes.
hardware back door in there.
Yes.
And then they have the quantum computing.
Oh, yes. China is tech. That's right. China's a tech leader, and they're going to be the next superpower, and they already are in some parts of the world. So we are in a adversarial position to some extent, and there's no simple answer. Anyway, so then you start leaking out data, and then you cover your tracks. You have a permanent presence, and you keep on doing it. Of course, this is nothing new from the military. We've done this in a non-cyber realm with espionage all the time, with just spies that sneak into your government and your countries, and they revert back to the enemy, and you keep them in there. This is just the cyber version of good old-fashioned espionage, like James Bond type, which has always been going on back to the dawn of time. So here are the major groups in America. America is the #1 group. The Russians call us the equation group. We are the primary aggressor in cyberspace. We have the most dangerous military in cyberspace, just like everywhere else. And we hack everybody. This is why it's kind of funny. Every time there's a public complaint about China hacking us, China says, we're hacking us 10 times as much, which, by the way, is probably absolutely true. But China doesn't have much we want to steal from them. That's the thing. Anyway, so then the Chinese are the main source of advanced resistant threat to steal intellectual property, like military fighter jets. Their fighter jets are just Chinese knockoffs of ours. They stole the complete plans and duplicated them. And Iran is also out there, and North Korea and Russia are out there, but they're all much smaller players than China, and they have a different focus. We'll talk a bit more about that. So here's the major threats. Russia. Their primary interest is to destabilize and harm democracy. What's going on in Russia is the USSR was their glory days, and Gorbachev led to the collapse of the USSR as they tried to imitate the American model and go to a free open market, and it was a complete disaster. Their open market there was too much corruption, so people actually lost their jobs and had no money. So in Russia, it is seen that the USSR was their glory days, and Gorbachev was a fool that destroyed their country and led them into poverty and disgrace. And Putin came in, like Donald Trump, to make Russia great again and restore the glory of the USSR. They are a fallen empire, and they are trying to get back to prominence, and they strongly believe a zero-sum game. They believe that in order for them to become powerful, communism must be an accepted ideology across the world, and they must destabilize democracy, which is the alternative. And so they are trying to harm us just for the sake of harming us. They're not like the Chinese that want to steal our stuff so they can use it. They want to harm us because they need our system to fail and to be seen as a failure. So theirs come up because both of us are being, every other nation on earth has to either be buddies with China or America. Everybody else, and so they want people to mistrust America and for America to be seen as chaotic and a failure, so they will go to Russia as their big brother, or China for that matter. Anyway, that's their motivation. Iran has their own motivations, and they do strange things like leak out the Game of Thrones. I don't quite know what the point of that was. North Korea leaked out, attacked Sony to punish them for making a movie that mocked their leader. North Korea funds their government entirely through cybercrime. They don't actually have a functioning economy at all. They live entirely by cyber theft, primarily cryptocurrency, but also SWIFT transactions, large amounts of currency. They steal so much money, they fund their military and other government departments with the stolen money. And they're extremely effective at it. And that's straight up financial. And China, of course, is trying to improve the welfare of their citizens, their technology, their standard of living, and they are currently in a state of very high morale. The current generation sees their children getting richer than they were. They see themselves the way America was in the 1950s, where they're really proud of their leaders, really proud of their system. They see it benefiting them greatly, and they feel like nobody has any right to insult them or mock them, and that they're totally right. And they have strong evidence that they are right because they're on the upward curve where they feel like the system is working. And they're moving forward to be the next superpower as the United States in decline and isolationism is falling back and abandoning the public field as we pretty much take our marbles and go home, leaving it to the Chinese. So it started in 2010. It had been going on since about 2003 that we know of, but it was public in 2010. The first one came out. 2000 when the Chinese attack came out, then the first major military offensive that destroyed physical hardware was done by the United States, was Stuxnet. We destroyed physical hardware in Iran with a virus. And they did it by messing up the isotope separators, so we were the first people to do that. And when that happened, a bunch of people freaked out and said we had ushered in a terrifying age of like killing people with cyber attacks, and that of course is true. You can argue about whether we shouldn't have done it, but we did do it. And then there major attacks went on here. Russia attacked Ukraine with a DDoS attack. Ukraine is Estonia. Estonia is a highly cyber culture where everything is done on the internet, every government service and voting, and Russia is totally hacking them and manipulating it to where I have read articles that say that Estonia is now the safest cyber place on earth because everybody is trained to be very, very careful from high school and all the way up because they're under constant attack by the Russians. And they say if everybody becomes knowledgeable and aware and cautious, you can actually be reasonably safe. It's an interesting issue. Anyway, Chinese hack of the OPM is one of the huge ones. They stole our data on all of our active military and spies and their weaknesses. They stole their profiles for their security clearances, which is probably the most sensitive data you could imagine. And it's been gone for a few years now. Here's Russia taking them down. And then there's WannaCry. WannaCry was one of the cyber attacks that caused human death. It was a ransomware that caused the British health system to go down, so people couldn't go to the hospital, and they got rerouted to other hospitals. And it would have caused death in America also, except for Marcus Hutchins, who analyzed the malware in the UK and happened by accident to find the off switch and turn it off. So when the time zone came to the working day in America, it was deactivated. So what's that?
How much time is left on the
Not much. But it was actually very easy what he did. We'll do it in the malware analysis class. You can very easily find the command and control center of malware. It's very easy to do. You can run it, watch the network traffic, you can just look at the strings. So he just found that the command and control center was not up. So he bought the domain And what he didn't know was they wrote it so that would shut it off. So it does seem like it was not a serious attack. It was like a prototype test or something, but it did bring down some major hospitals in Britain. And it would have done a lot of damage here. So here's the scorecard. As far as physically destroying things, the only people that have ever done that are the US and just Russia, I think? Yeah, so they've done it, they did it to Estonia. And by the way, they tried to do it to Saudi Arabia, tried to kill people in Saudi Arabia recently. We'll get to that. And then here's wipers. Wipers are things that completely reformat the machine and destroy all the data. This is a big one in the attacks in the Mideast because you don't want people finding your tracks. This is what went wrong with Stuxnet. The United States and Israel worked together to create and distribute Stuxnet to hurt Iran, and we did it sloppily so that we lost control of the stuff, and it leaked and was caught by antivirus engines, which is why we know about it. That was a failed military operation because it should have been secret and nobody should ever have known. The reason we knew is because it left traces and left copies of it on other machines to where somebody caught it. So the other way to do it is the wiper technique, where the malware infects a machine, it checks to see if this is the target, and if not, it spreads, and then it erases that drive, wipes it out completely, leaving no traces so nobody can get a sample. And that's a fairly popular technique. And here's DDoS, which is a big one, just flooding a network with traffic. Everyone's been doing that all along for a lot of reasons. Anyway, so here's one of the many maps of where all these attacks are. And as you can see, the US is a big target. Obviously, the problem is we are the holders of most of the credit cards, intellectual property, and everything else, so we are the natural people to be attacked. Although North Korea has a particular bone to pick with South Korea, and they spend most of their time attacking South Korea because they're still fighting the Korean War. They still think they should own South Korea, and they're trying to get it back. And anyway, so here's a list of the many Chinese attacks, many, many groups here, Night Dragon, Shady Rat, and so on. They attack many dissident groups. They attack Tibetan groups. Chinese are very sophisticated about this. And they have many, many attack chains, and they go on for years. And then so here's the China rules. And like I say, there's only two kinds of companies in America, the ones that know they've been hacked by the Chinese and the ones that don't know they've been hacked by the Chinese. That was James Comey in 2014, and it hasn't gotten any better since then, which is why we're all here. There's an explosion of hiring in this business, which is why everybody should be taking these classes and getting jobs, because we are losing. More people get hacked every year, more data gets stolen, there are more intrusions. So since we don't know anything else to do, we just want to hire more and more staff. So that's what we're doing. And then there's a long chain of Russian cyber attacks and a long chain of Iranian attacks. And these have all been found by these various organizations. Who knows how many we didn't find, but many of these attacks have gone out. This is the one that got me kind of personally involved in this. The Russians attacked Saudi Arabia. They attacked their major oil refinery in order to turn off the safety controls at a major refinery and kill people. Now, they happened to find it and stop it before that killed people, but there were two other similar attacks. One was called Shamoon, and there was another one, and this caused the people in Saudi Arabia to become very, very afraid. Their security is pretty far behind us, and they see the United States correctly as the security leader in the world, so they contacted me, and they wanted me to go teach classes in Saudi Arabia, which I have begun doing, because they need help, and they want Americans to go over there, and because they're currently politically incorrect because their leader killed a journalist, they need somebody who doesn't care about being politically incorrect, and that would be me. So I'm one of the few people willing to do that. So I've been teaching security classes online to people in Saudi Arabia, and I'll probably be traveling there within the next 6 months. Yeah.
Is it a specific city?
Is
I
it?
lived there as a kid, so I just wondering, is it a certain?
I think it'll be Riyadh, but I'm not sure.
Really?
I think so, yeah. But I know it's. I'll know more as we go ahead. They're arranging it, but the Middle East is desperate for security education, and they want to bring in Americans to teach it because they believe Americans are the leaders, which I think is true. So I'm one of them. And so this is the one. It was Russians that attacked them to bring down the petrochemical plant and cause a disaster which would have killed people, which it didn't do, but they're afraid it would. So here's a summary of the Russian attacks. Russia, in order to destabilize us, has for years been doing blatant attacks to show that if you offend Putin, there is nowhere to hide on earth. So they've been killing people inside Great Britain, and they've been doing things like smuggling in large amounts of dangerous radioactive materials into the heart of London and releasing it, harming a lot more people in the target to show that they just don't care, and using things like Novichok, their nerve agent, which nobody else has, and polonium-210, so that it just puts their fingerprint on it. It's like the people in Mexico, the gangs, the cartels, when they kill somebody, they don't just kill them, they string them up and paint a sign on them so everybody knows exactly who killed them, because they're trying, it's terrorism. They're trying to make you know, to be afraid, and that's what this is. They're making sure that everybody knows exactly who did it, so that they know that there is no place safe to hide. And the Western nations, the UK and Britain and America, seem helpless. We don't seem to have any clue how to respond to this. I mean, apparently have the guts to start a war, and they don't really know what to do. Obama was really baffled. He promised to hack them, then kind of withdrew from it. This is the problem in modern warfare. You don't really want to start sending bombs and troops, but then what exactly do you do to express your great displeasure? You say something mean on the news, you send them a nasty letter, we hack them, this is the problem in modern warfare. It's not quite clear what the punchback should be. And so here's Hillary Clinton went to the Russians with a reset button saying, we'll forgive you for everything in 2009 and try starting over, which they just laugh at us for, but this one attempt, they're trying to normalize relations. Dan Coates tried telling Trump that the Russians hacked the election, and Trump responded by firing him, because the problem is, of course, Trump feels very insecure. He feels he wants to lie about how popular he is. He won the election by a thread, and a lot of it was due to propaganda from the Russians and various mistakes made by the Hillary campaign. And if the Democrats are trying to push an agenda that is because the Russians hacked us, that Trump won, and he very much does not want to hear that. So he does not want to hear anything about how the Russians hacking us. And of course, whether it's the reason he won or not, the Russians absolutely did perform a lot of propaganda attacks with fake social media accounts. And they did try to take over a lot of election systems, although they didn't, as far as we know, actually succeed in taking over anything that would directly affect vote counts. But it's a problem. Our military would like to do something about it, but our president wants to deny it's happening for political reasons. And this is nothing new. Presidents always have political reasons, which are often opposed to military truths. This is not like, it makes Trump worse than other presidents, really. He has certain defects that are very annoying, but every president has a different role in the military. And the military always says, look, I know what to do. Let's just punch this guy. And the president always says, oh, no, I'd lose too many votes. Somebody would get mad. This is how our system is supposed to work. We're supposed to have a civilian leader with different priorities than the military. That's why we don't have a military dictatorship, but it does mean you have this constant conflict between what seems obvious to the military people and what seems obvious to the politicians, and somehow they're not on the same page. So Mitch McConnell, the New York Times spread to this extreme. Mitch McConnell very much does not want to have any increased election security. He has phrased this as an issue of states' rights. He does not want the federal government controlling elections at the state level. And there is a principle there that might possibly make sense, but it certainly does make him a Russian asset. That's the argument the New York Times makes here. They know the Russians are attacking us right now, and we are still pretty much doing nothing about it, at least at the federal level. So we started with Stuxnet to bring down these nuclear isotope separators, and that was very interesting stuff. I was very excited when this stuff came out and learned how to do it. I was on my airplane going to a conference when this came out. I paid for the internet on the airplane. I rewrote my entire talk on the airplane. I said, forget what I was going to say. We're going to play with this. Because we had Stuxnet, turn it on, watch it go. Very exciting stuff. You plug in a USB stick, and when it pops up the box and you see the files, you're owned. The process that draws the graphic folder was hijacked with a DIL loading hijacking, which would then take over your machine. It was very beautiful. Very effective. All you do is plug in a USB stick and you're already owned. You don't open a file, click a link or anything. You can't do that anymore. They put patches after Windows XP to prevent that, but at this time, that was fantastic.
Does two-factor authentication help prevent any of this stuff?
Two-factor authentication was not common at this time, but it wouldn't have done any good because you'd already be logged in when you plug in the USB stick. The only thing that would do is prevent some kind of attack where you're not authenticated. But this is an authenticated attack. You get someone to plug it in. That's why there was another thing called Buckshot Yankee at this time, where you would attack a base, you would drop USB sticks outside, and somebody will pick it up and plug it in. This is something people are trying to teach people not to do. Don't just plug in random USB sticks at work, although people still do it, because you can totally take over a machine if you plug in a USB stick. And that's why some of the more edgier security researchers have developed USB sticks that include a capacitor, so they will physically destroy any computer they're plugged into. And they leave them around to get people out of the habit of just plugging in random junk they pick up off the ground. But still, that was the lesson here. This is why you may have heard about it 6 years ago, the US Army forbid all use of USB sticks and block them up with like paste and stuff. This is why. They were doing this to Iran, and we realized that you can totally take over a machine by just plugging something in. So they outlawed them for a while.
How do we know that the USB sticks in China now?
That's a very good question. How do we know? And that's why people don't want us using Huawei routers anymore or Kaspersky antivirus. You totally don't know. And all the hardware is made in China, and there is no way to tell. That's why when that article came out in Bloomberg claiming that China was in fact adding hardware Trojans to all our devices, everyone freaked out and said, oh my God, they totally could be.
So they have to stop the manufacturing stuff from there?
That's what we would like to do. The US military would like to stop using stuff made in China, but there's nobody else that will make semiconductors anymore because it pollutes the water supply. And nobody else is willing to put up with the water pollution except China. So yes, we should not be using Chinese hardware, but we have no choice, and we're still using it. Our military is using it and everybody. Probably so. That's the problem. And that's the problem of the advanced resistant threat. And there's another one for you, which is getting a lot of press now, is the supply chain attacks. Your software uses libraries, and those libraries use other libraries. So if you write a piece of software, it's actually using hundreds of libraries written by other people in foreign countries that you don't know. And those people, if you write a Firefox extension and it gets like a couple 100,000 downloads, you will get an email from foreign criminals offering to buy it from you because they will take your extension and buy it, and then they'll put a malicious update. Everybody's update will go on there. So the fact is, you're trusting a whole supply chain of libraries and software when you run your machine, and all of those can make mistakes and be hacked and be subverted. If you would like to say everything in this device is American made and I know it can be trusted, and we are so far from that many people are upset and trying to find a way to get back to that. There was a time when you had like I know, and there's time when you had American cars that were built in America, but that hasn't been that way for decades. There's nothing that's really built in America from American parts anymore, and that does have a downside. Anyway, so Stuxnet connects to the command and control servers. Anyway, so we have a lot of classes here in this stuff. This one we're doing this semester, practical malware analysis, where you analyze malware and learn how it works on Windows machines. And this one, I think, is also happening this semester, IR, which is learning what Mandiant did. This is the second, these are both Mandiant books. This is the beginning Mandiant book that teaches you how the kind of advanced malware works and how to analyze it on Windows machines. And this is the second book in the Mandiant program, teaching you how to become an incident responder who will deal with advanced persistent threats after you detect them. You learn how to detect them, and you learn the recommended procedures to get rid of them. This is sort of halfway between a management class like this. This is a highly technical class, this one here, where you're going exactly down into the kernel and the binary and the assembly code to understand what's happening with the malware. And this class is a management class, not at all about that, about the layers of security controls. And this is in between, incident response. This is how you organize the team and what the different members are doing, and using tools like Splunk that make it easy to detect things. So there are many different layers involved in properly securing your network. You have management with policies and procedures and training, and you have these binary jockeys with their IDA Pro open, figuring out bit by bit what happened, and you have the people in the middle. All of them have to work together to effectively protect your company. Yeah. Yeah.
That's not available this semester.
It is. It is available this semester. I think it's Thursdays. Yeah, I think all these are in fact available this semester. Let me bring up my website. And here's, now I'll leave this one. Yeah, this semester, this is what I'm teaching. The malware analysis, there is a Windows-based binary stuff. This is the Linux-based binary stuff, mostly in exploit development. And this is 152, is the instant response. And this cybersecurity responsibilities is the one you're in now, which is management level. So and other semesters, we have other ones like this one here, a network security monitoring, which is now a strict Splunk certification class, which is one unit class. That's a quite valuable certificate to get and quite easy to get. Splunk is the #1 tool that everybody uses. It is very nice and luxurious. It is the standard. It's very expensive. So Splunk employees get a lot of money. They just offered me a job at Splunk. I haven't taken it yet, but anyway, we'll see. But there's but they want me to teach people how to use Splunk, and I said, yeah, that's what I'm doing anyway.
Maybe you use the software for free, right?
Well, of course, but I have to get a couple more certs, and then I'd be going into companies to teach them how to use their Splunk, like a corporate trainer, and I'm not opposed to that. That might. Yeah, not in this course, but in 152 we'll do it somewhat, and 50 is nothing but Splunk. In 152 we'll have quite a few Splunks. because Splunk is really important. But this class is specifically to get this certificate, which is the official Splunk certificate. 152, I just wrote the first several projects are going to be using Splunk.
So that is specifically training.
Yeah, this is specifically for the certificate. In 152, it's just going to be one of many tools we'll cover. But yeah, Splunk is one of the top tools that everybody has to have in this business. Everybody should know how to use it. It's like Microsoft Office is what you need if you use business. If you're in security management, everybody uses Splunk. Or they use one of the cheaper alternatives, and they wish they could afford Splunk. But you know, Splunk is one of those things, you got to know Photoshop if you're in graphics. So it's just the standard. So I got a few cahoots about this, and that'll do for today. So let me bring them up.
A couple of messages.
Oh, messages. Oh, good. Thank you for telling me. I often miss the messages.